I never expected my life to change during Christmas dinner at my father's mansion. As crystal glasses clinked and my father Walter mocked my startup, calling me poor compared to my brother Jackson, my phone vibrated on the table. I answered without checking who it was. The banker spoke clearly through the speaker. "Mr. Channing, regarding Miss Emily's accounts, the final transfer is complete. Your combined holdings now total $26 billion. Jackson dropped his crystal glass on the marble floor. My father froze mid-sentence. Everything changed in that single moment. Growing up as a Morgan meant understanding that worth was measured in dollars and cents. My father, Walter, built Morgan Real Estate from nothing, expanding across 3 states and accumulating enough wealth to buy the sprawling Connecticut estate where we gathered each Christmas. The 20,000-square-foot mansion with its 12 bedrooms and indoor pool was his pride, the physical manifestation of his success. "Jackson gets it," my father would say about my older brother, who followed him into real estate at 22 and now, at 34, managed his own division of the company. Jackson drove a Ferrari, dated models, and lived in a penthouse my father helped him purchase. He was the golden child, the true heir to the Morgan legacy. My younger sister Abigail took the path of least resistance. She married Thomas Bradford when she was 26. The Bradfords owned hotel chains across the East Coast. The merger of families delighted my father more than the actual wedding did. Abigail lived comfortably in their Martha's Vineyard estate, hosting charity events and managing her husband's social calendar. Then there was me, Channing Morgan, 30 years old, and the family disappointment. Instead of joining Morgan Real Estate, I studied computer science at Stanford. When I graduated, I worked for 2 tech startups before launching my own company 3 years ago. Playing with computers, my father called it, whenever family conversation turned to my career. A hobby, not a business. I drove a 5-year-old Toyota and lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Boston. By Morgan standards, this was practically poverty. My father never missed an opportunity to remind me how I had failed to launch. 2 years ago, I met Emily at a tech conference in San Francisco. She was brilliant, with a mind that processed complex problems in ways that left me in awe. She had developed an algorithm that could predict market trends with astonishing accuracy, but needed help commercializing it. Where I excelled at business development and networking, Emily was pure technical genius. We became partners in both business and life, though I kept our relationship relatively private from my family. Emily came from a modest background herself, raised by a single mother who taught high school mathematics. My father would have dismissed her instantly if he knew, just another reason in his mind why I was throwing my life away. 2 months ago, Emily approached me with a breakthrough. Her algorithm had evolved into something revolutionary, capable of processing financial data points across global markets and predicting movements with 98% accuracy. We formed a new company together, with Emily as the silent technical partner and me handling the business operations. We poured everything we had into development, living frugally, despite Emily having family money of her own. We had meetings with investors who recognized the potential of what we had created. A major tech conglomerate expressed interest in acquiring our company, but the negotiations were delicate and ongoing. Emily and I agreed to keep everything confidential until the deal was finalized. I pulled my Toyota into the circular driveway of my father's mansion on Christmas Eve, parking between Jackson's Ferrari and Abigail's Range Rover. Before I could even ring the doorbell, Jackson opened the door, champagne glass in hand. "The prodigal son returns. Still driving that economy car, I see," he laughed. "Dad thought you might have upgraded by now. Guess the computer hobby isn't paying off yet." I forced a smile and stepped inside. The foyer was decorated with a 12-foot Christmas tree, adorned with gold and silver ornaments. Holiday music played softly from hidden speakers. The smell of the catered dinner filled the air. "Channing," my father called from across the room. He was dressed in a tailored suit, as if Christmas dinner were a board meeting. "Glad you could make it. You remember Ashley, don't you?" My stomach dropped as I spotted my ex-girlfriend standing beside him. Ashley had dated me for 8 months 2 years ago, before leaving me for a hedge fund manager with a summer house in the Hamptons. She smiled tightly, raising her champagne glass in my direction. "What is she doing here?" I whispered to Jackson. "Dad invited her." Jackson shrugged with a smirk. "Thought it would be nice to have more guests this year." I realized instantly what this was. Another one of my father's orchestrated humiliations. Ashley represented yet another area where I had failed in his eyes. She had chosen wealth and status over me, validating his worldview that success was measured only in financial terms. "Merry Christmas, Channing," Ashley said, approaching with practiced poise. "Your father tells me your computer thing is still going. How persistent of you." I checked my phone, hoping to see a message from Emily saying she was on her way. She had promised to join us for dinner, but was finishing some final work on the acquisition paperwork. "Emily will be joining us shortly," I said to no one in particular. "Your business partner?" my father asked dismissively. "The one you mentioned at Thanksgiving?" "Well, we look forward to meeting this technical genius you keep talking about." The way he said genius dripped with sarcasm. In that moment, I realized this evening was going to be even more difficult than I had anticipated. My father had not invited me home for Christmas to reconcile or understand my choices. He had created the perfect stage to showcase what he perceived as my failure. The dining room glittered with crystal and silver. The long mahogany table was set for 8 people, with name cards placing me directly across from Ashley and beside an empty seat for Emily. My father sat at the head of the table, with Jackson to his right and Abigail with her husband Thomas to his left. "Let me tell you about the Westbrook development," Jackson announced as the first course was served by silent, efficient staff. "We closed on it last week. $30 million project, set to break ground in February." My father beamed with pride. "That's my boy. Largest development in the company's history. The Morgans are making their mark on the Boston skyline." "That sounds wonderful," Ashley commented, her eyes flicking briefly to me. "Real estate is such a solid investment. Unlike some industries," my father added, turning to me. "How is your startup doing, Channing? Still trying to make that algorithm thing work?" Before I could answer, Jackson jumped in. "Dad, be fair. Not everyone can handle real business. Some people need to play with computers before they grow up." Abigail gave me a sympathetic look, but remained silent. Her husband Thomas chuckled politely at Jackson's joke. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Running late. Deal paperwork taking longer than expected. Be there in 30. Don't let them get to you." I put my phone away and took a sip of water. The company is doing well, actually. We're in the final stages of some exciting developments. "Final stages," my father repeated skeptically. "You've been saying that for 3 years now. At some point, you need to admit when something isn't working out." "It's working out fine," I insisted. "Our technology has applications across multiple industries. We're just being selective about our growth strategy." "Selective?" Jackson snorted. "Is that what they call it when no one wants to invest?" Ashley smirked behind her wine glass. "I heard something interesting from Gerald Hoffman last week," my father said casually, mentioning one of the venture capitalists I had pitched 6 months ago. "He said your presentation was conceptually interesting but practically underdeveloped." His exact words. I felt my face grow warm. Gerald had indeed passed on our first round of funding, but that was before Emily's breakthrough. What bothered me more was realizing my father had been discussing my business with potential investors. "Have you been calling my contacts?" I asked directly. My father shrugged. "The Morgans have a reputation to maintain. I wanted to make sure you weren't embarrassing the family name with half-baked ideas." "A toast," Jackson interrupted, raising his glass. "To real success and family legacy. May the Morgan name continue to stand for excellence in business for generations to come." Everyone raised their glasses except me. The slight was obvious and intentional. As the main course arrived, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw it was our lawyer, Sam Daniels. "Excuse me, I need to take this," I said, standing from the table. Really, Channing? During Christmas dinner? My father scolded. I stepped into the hallway and answered. Sam, what's up? Just checking if Emily sent you the final acquisition documents? The buyers are ready to transfer the funds once you both sign off. She's working on them now. Should be done tonight. Excellent. $20 billion. Not bad for 3 years of work, kid. Congratulations. Thanks, Sam. We'll talk tomorrow. I ended the call and took a deep breath before returning to the dining room. $20 billion. After years of work, doubt, and sacrifice, it was really happening, and my family had no idea. When I returned to the table, my father was telling a story about a failed restaurant that had leased space in one of his buildings. Some people just aren't cut out for business, he concluded as I sat down. No shame in it. That's why working for someone else is the right choice for most people. Speaking of business, I said calmly, did you know that Venture Partners has been asking about our company? My father's eyebrows raised slightly. Venture Partners was one of the largest investment firms in the country. Probably doing due diligence before passing, Jackson suggested. Actually, I continued, I had an interesting meeting last week with someone who mentioned you, Dad. Oh? My father looked genuinely curious now. Yes, James Wilson at Sutton Investments. He said you'd been calling him and other potential investors, suggesting my company wasn't worth their time, that I was incompetent, and the technology was speculative at best. A tense silence fell over the table. My father's expression hardened. I was doing you a favor, he finally said. Saving you from embarrassment when this little computer project inevitably fails. Then you can join the family business with some dignity intact. You were actively sabotaging my company, I corrected him, calling my investors and spreading rumors. I was protecting the Morgan name, he insisted. Something you seem to have little concern for while you waste your potential on pipe dreams. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Emily had arrived. The housekeeper led Emily into the dining room. She wore a simple but elegant black dress, her dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders. She looked professional and confident, though I could tell she was tense from the set of her jaw. Sorry I'm late, she said with a polite smile. Work emergency. I stood and made introductions. Everyone, this is Emily Carter, my business partner and girlfriend. Emily, this is my father Walter, my brother Jackson, my sister Abigail, and her husband Thomas, and Ashley. My father assessed Emily with the calculating gaze he reserved for business evaluations. Jackson barely concealed his disappointment at her ordinary appearance. I could almost see him mentally cataloging her lack of designer labels or flashy jewelry. Miss Carter, my father said, gesturing to the empty seat beside me. We've heard so much about this algorithm you've developed. Channing speaks very highly of your technical abilities. Emily took her seat. Thank you for having me. Your home is beautiful. Morgan Real Estate has been quite successful, my father replied. We build things that last. Tangible assets. The real estate market has its ups and downs, but land always holds value. Unlike tech bubbles, Jackson added. Here today, gone tomorrow. Emily nodded thoughtfully. Market volatility is precisely what our technology addresses, actually. We've developed predictive models that can identify patterns across multiple sectors. Fascinating, my father said in a tone that suggested the opposite. And what exactly is your background in finance? I have a PhD in applied mathematics from MIT, Emily replied. My dissertation focused on algorithmic prediction models. I worked at Goldman Sachs for 3 years before starting my own research. This seemed to surprise my father, though he recovered quickly. Impressive credentials. Yet after all this education and experience, you chose to partner with someone who has no financial background whatsoever. Channing brings complementary skills, Emily said firmly. He understands how to build a business around technology. That's rarer than you might think. Jackson laughed. Building a business requires capital. Last I checked, little brother was still living in that apartment in Boston and driving a car from 2017. Some people prefer to invest in their companies rather than their lifestyle, Emily replied smoothly. The conversation continued through dinner, with my father and Jackson taking turns making subtle jabs at my career choices, while Emily consistently but politely countered their arguments. The tension in the room was building, and I could see my father becoming increasingly irritated that Emily wasn't intimidated by him. The problem with technology investments, my father declared as dessert was being served, is that they're based on speculation rather than concrete value. Real estate provides returns you can count on. In established markets, perhaps, Emily conceded, but disruptive technology can create exponential returns that traditional investments simply cannot match. Theoretical returns, Jackson scoffed. Meanwhile, real businesses generate real revenue. My phone rang again, interrupting the debate. It was our banker, Richard Thompson. With the acquisition paperwork finally complete, he must be calling about the fund transfer. Sorry, I need to take this, I said, reaching for my phone. Again? My father exclaimed. Whatever it is can wait until after dinner. It's our banker, I explained. It might be important. Your banker, Jackson repeated with a smirk. Calling on Christmas Eve? What's the emergency? Your account overdrawn again? I answered the call but accidentally hit the speaker button as I raised the phone. Richard's voice filled the dining room. Mr. Channing, we need your authorization to complete the transfer for Miss Emily's accounts. After today's acquisition, your combined holdings will total approximately $26 billion. As our most valued clients, we wanted to personally confirm the routing instructions for the new foundation account you're establishing. The room went completely silent. Jackson's wineglass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. My father's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Richard, I said quickly, taking the phone off speaker. Let me call you back in 5 minutes. I ended the call and looked around the table. Every face registered shock, though in different ways. Jackson looked like he'd been slapped. My father's expression was unreadable. Ashley's mouth had fallen open, inelegantly. $26 billion? My father finally managed. What exactly is going on, Channing? Emily reached for my hand under the table and squeezed it reassuringly. The computer thing worked out, I said simply. My father's demeanor transformed instantly. The dismissiveness vanished, replaced by an eager smile I recognized from his business dealings. Well, this is wonderful news. Why didn't you tell us? We should be celebrating your success. Jackson quickly recovered his composure. Absolutely. I always knew you had it in you, little brother. All those times I teased you about the startup life were just motivation, you know that, right? Actually, Emily said, her voice cool and controlled, we weren't planning to announce anything tonight. The deal just happened to close earlier than expected. What deal exactly? My father pressed, now fully engaged. TechCore Investments has acquired our company and algorithm, I explained. The terms include ongoing roles for both of us and significant equity in the parent company. $26 billion, Jackson repeated, as if trying to process the number. That's more than the entire Morgan real estate portfolio, I finished for him. Yes, I'm aware. My father's expression shifted again, this time to something resembling respect mixed with calculation. Son, this changes everything. We should talk about how to integrate this with the family business. I have some excellent tax strategies that could help you protect this windfall. Emily's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it, then turned to me. Interesting. Jackson had a meeting with representatives from Datasphere last week. Datasphere was our main competitor, a company that had been trying to develop similar technology to ours for years. How do you know that? Jackson demanded. Their CEO just congratulated me on the acquisition and mentioned they'd been approached by you with an offer to share our proprietary information, Emily said calmly. They declined, of course, and thought we should know. Jackson's face flushed red. That's absurd. I was simply networking with industry players. You tried to steal our technology, I said, the realization dawning on me. You met with our competitors and offered to help them duplicate our work. You never shared any details about your company with us, Jackson defended himself. How was I supposed to know who your competitors were? You researched us, Emily stated. Just like your father has been calling our potential investors to sabotage our funding rounds. My father had the grace to look uncomfortable. I was simply performing due diligence. The Morgan name carries weight in business circles. Due diligence? I repeated incredulously. You told Gerald Hoffman our technology was fraudulent. You called James Wilson and said I was incompetent. I may have been overcautious, my father admitted reluctantly. But clearly it all worked out in the end. The conversation was interrupted by a staff member clearing the broken glass from Jackson's spilled wine. In that moment of distraction, my father leaned toward me. Channing, we should discuss this privately. I have connections that could be very valuable to you now. I think we've had enough family business discussion for one night, I replied, standing from the table. Emily and I should be going. We have some paperwork to finish. Don't be hasty, my father urged. This is a celebration. Let me open some of the good champagne. As my father went to the wine cellar, Jackson approached Emily. You know, he said in a low voice, I have extensive business connections that could be very useful for your technology, much more established than Channing's network. Emily regarded him coolly. Interesting offer, considering you just tried to sell our intellectual property to our competitors. A misunderstanding, Jackson insisted. I was actually gathering intelligence for Channing's benefit. We have the recording of your meeting, Emily informed him quietly. Your offer to provide our proprietary code, in exchange for a consulting position, was quite explicit. Jackson's confident smile faltered. The dining room had transformed into a battlefield of forced smiles and calculated moves. My father returned with an expensive bottle of champagne. His entire demeanor changed from condescending patriarch to eager business partner. A toast, he declared, filling crystal flutes with precision. To Channing and Emily, whose vision and determination have led to extraordinary success. The Morgan family welcomes you, Emily, and looks forward to a prosperous future together. Ashley, who had been conspicuously quiet since the phone call, suddenly found her voice. Channing, I always believed in your potential. Remember how I used to encourage your work? I nearly choked on my champagne. That's not how I remember it. You left because, and I quote, dating a tech dreamer with no real prospects is cute in college but pathetic at 28. Ashley flushed. I was young and materialistic then. People change. They certainly do, I agreed. Usually right after they hear about a $26 billion acquisition. Abigail, who had remained mostly silent throughout dinner, finally spoke up. Can someone explain what's actually happening here? How did Channing and Emily develop something worth billions without any of us knowing about it? Emily set down her champagne flute. I developed an algorithm that can predict market movements across multiple sectors with 98% accuracy. It processes millions of data points in real time to identify patterns human analysts would never detect. We've been working on this for 3 years, I added. Living modestly, reinvesting everything into development. But why the secrecy? My father demanded. Family supports family. Does it? I asked pointedly. You've spent years undermining my choices, Dad, actively working against my success. Why would I share details of our business with you? My father had the grace to look slightly abashed, though it didn't last long. Perhaps I was overzealous in my concern. I only wanted what was best for you. What was best for the Morgan name, I corrected. Jackson, who had been whispering something to Ashley, jumped back into the conversation. This is fantastic news for the whole family. We should discuss how to leverage this windfall across all our interests. Our company remains independent within the larger TechCore structure, Emily explained patiently. The funds aren't a windfall to be distributed. They're investment capital for our continued research and development. But surely there's room for family partnerships, my father pressed. Morgan Real Estate has several promising development opportunities that could use capital investment. We're not venture capitalists, I said firmly. My phone buzzed with an email notification. I glanced at it and felt a surge of anger. Dad, did you contact Calvin West at TechCore this evening? My father's expression confirmed it before he spoke. I may have reached out to congratulate him on the acquisition. Calvin and I serve on a charity board together. And did you suggest that you and Jackson should be brought on as strategic advisors to help guide my inexperienced decision-making? Jackson interjected quickly. We have decades of business experience between us. It only makes sense to leverage that for the family's benefit. Calvin forwarded me your emails, I said, turning my phone to show them. You contacted him less than 20 minutes after learning about the acquisition. Before the champagne was even opened, you were already trying to insert yourselves into my company. That's standard business practice, my father defended, moving quickly on opportunities. Emily stood up. Mr. Morgan, we've built our company based on ethical business practices and transparency with our partners. Your attempt to circumvent Channing's authority undermines the very foundation of our work. Now see here, my father began, his tone hardening. No, you see, I interrupted. This is exactly why I've kept my distance from the family business. You don't respect boundaries. You don't respect my choices or my abilities. I built an empire from nothing, my father countered, his voice rising. Everything you have, the education that led to this moment, came from my hard work and success. And I'm grateful for the opportunities that provided, I acknowledged. But it doesn't give you the right to control my life or undermine my business. Control? My father scoffed. I've been trying to save you from yourself. Without the Morgan name and connections, you'd be nothing. That's where you're wrong, Emily interjected calmly. Channing built our company on his own merits. His integrity and vision are why TechCore valued our partnership. Jackson, seeing the conversation spiraling beyond his ability to manipulate, tried a different approach. Let's all calm down. We're family. We should be celebrating, not arguing. Family doesn't try to steal intellectual property, I reminded him. Family doesn't sabotage business relationships. That's a serious accusation, Jackson said, his voice lowering dangerously. Be careful what you say next. Emily pulled out her phone. We have the recording of your meeting with DataSphere executives from last Tuesday. Would you like me to play it for everyone? The color drained from Jackson's face. You're bluffing. Emily pressed play. Jackson's voice filled the room. My brother doesn't understand what he has. I can provide complete access to their algorithm and development notes. All I ask is a suitable position, reflecting my contribution. She stopped the recording. The room fell silent. You recorded me illegally, Jackson sputtered after a moment. Actually, DataSphere's legal team recorded the meeting as standard practice for all potential partnership discussions, Emily corrected him. They were concerned about your proposal and shared it with us as a professional courtesy. Abigail looked at Jackson with new eyes. You actually tried to steal Channing's work? Your own brother? It's not that simple, Jackson defended. I was exploring options that could benefit everyone. By committing corporate espionage? Thomas, Abigail's husband, spoke for the first time in a while. That's a serious legal issue, Jackson. My father, sensing the situation deteriorating beyond his control, attempted to redirect. What's done is done. We're family. We can work through this misunderstanding. This isn't a misunderstanding, I said firmly. This is a pattern of behavior. You raised us to compete against each other instead of supporting one another. You measured our worth solely by financial success and status. And now you've won that competition, my father said, spreading his hands. $26 billion. You've proven yourself by the very metrics I established. That's not the point, I insisted. The money isn't what matters. It's the work itself, the purpose behind it. Something neither of you has ever understood. The evening had deteriorated beyond any hope of a traditional family Christmas. Ashley had retreated to a corner of the room, texting furiously, likely updating her social circle about the dramatic turn of events. Abigail and Thomas sat in uncomfortable silence, while Jackson paced near the fireplace, occasionally shooting dark glances in my direction. My father had shifted into full damage control mode. Perhaps we should all take a step back and discuss this calmly. Channing, Emily, tell us more about this technology. Help us understand what you've created. Emily looked at me questioningly. I nodded slightly. Our system, she began, uses artificial intelligence to analyze market data across multiple sectors simultaneously. Where traditional models might examine a few hundred variables, ours processes millions in real time. The breakthrough came from Emily's work in mathematical pattern recognition, I added. She developed an entirely new approach to predictive modeling. And this is worth $26 billion? Jackson asked skeptically. The financial prediction application alone is worth that, Emily explained. But the underlying technology has applications in healthcare, climate science, logistics, and dozens of other fields. My father leaned forward, genuinely interested now. So TechCore acquired not just the financial application, but the core technology itself? Yes, I confirmed. With the agreement that Emily and I continue leading its development and application, we maintain creative control while gaining the resources of a major tech company. Smart, Thomas commented. Much better than a straight buyout. We've been planning this for years, I explained. Living modestly, reinvesting everything into research and development. Emily and I shared a vision of technology that could solve fundamental problems across industries. That's why we were so secretive, Emily added. In tech, intellectual property is everything. One leak could have compromised years of work. My father seemed to be processing this information, seeing me in a new light. And you negotiated this deal yourself? Without legal teams or investment bankers? We had our own legal counsel, I said. But yes, I handled the negotiations directly. A notification chimed on my phone. I glanced at it and felt another surge of disbelief. Unbelievable, I muttered. What now? Emily asked. I showed her my phone. My father and Jackson have already contacted 3 members of TechCore's board, positioning themselves as essential advisors to the Morgan Technology Initiative. My father had the decency to look embarrassed. Networking is second nature in business, Channing. Surely you understand that. What I understand, I said, my voice hardening, is that within an hour of learning about our success, you're already trying to take control of it. Not control, my father objected. Support. The Morgan name carries weight in business circles. The Morgan name isn't what closed this deal, I countered. Emily's genius and our hard work did that. Jackson, unable to contain himself, burst out. This should be a family enterprise. We should all benefit from this windfall. It's not a lottery win, Emily explained, with forced patience. It's investment in our ongoing research and development. We've established a foundation, I added. 10% of the acquisition funds will go toward educational initiatives for underprivileged students interested in technology. Philanthropy is fine, my father said dismissively. But family comes first. The Morgan legacy must be considered. That's exactly what I'm doing, I replied. Building a legacy based on innovation and ethical business practices, not just accumulation of wealth. My father's face reddened. You think I built this family's success without ethics? I worked myself to the bone to provide opportunities for you children. Opportunities with strings attached, I pointed out. Conditional love based on following your exact path. That's not fair, my father protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? You've spent years belittling my choices because they didn't align with your vision for me. You actively worked to undermine my business relationships because you couldn't control my company. My father stood suddenly, his face flushed. You, ungrateful. He stopped, pressing a hand to his chest, his breathing becoming labored. Dad? Abigail asked, concerned. Are you okay? He waved her off, but his discomfort was obvious. Just need a moment, he gasped, loosening his tie. I moved to his side, helping him to sit down. Take deep breaths. Should we call someone? No, he insisted, though his voice was strained. Just stress. Give me a minute. The room fell silent as we watched my father struggle to regain his composure. After a few minutes, his breathing normalized, though he remained pale. "Water," he requested, and Thomas quickly brought him a glass. In that moment of vulnerability, something shifted. My father seemed smaller somehow, the powerful patriarch image cracking to reveal an aging man terrified of irrelevance. "I never meant to," he began, then stopped. "Perhaps I've been too rigid in my expectations." "Perhaps," I agreed quietly. "You really built all this yourself?" he asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. "Emily and I together," I corrected. "As equal partners, supporting each other's strengths." My father nodded slowly. "That's impressive, truly." It was possibly the first genuine compliment he had given me in years. "I was threatened," he admitted after a moment, surprising everyone. "Your independence, your refusal to join the family business. It felt like rejection of everything I'd built." "It wasn't rejection," I explained. "It was finding my own path." "The path you've found," he said quietly, "has exceeded anything I imagined for you." The atmosphere in the room had transformed. Jackson remained tense and defensive, but my father seemed to be having a moment of genuine reflection. "Why did you invite Ashley tonight?" I asked. The question that had bothered me all evening. My father looked embarrassed. I thought seeing her would remind you of what you'd lost by not following a more traditional path." "Another manipulation," I noted. "Yes," he admitted. "Not my proudest moment." Ashley, hearing her name, rejoined the conversation. "Channing, I want you to know that my feelings for you were always genuine." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Were they? Or were they contingent on his financial prospects?" Ashley had the grace to look ashamed. "People can change." "They can," I agreed. "But trust, once broken, isn't easily rebuilt." My father took another sip of water. "I need to lie down for a bit," he said, attempting to stand. I helped him up. "Let's get you to your room." As we left the dining room, I heard Jackson mutter to Ashley, "This changes nothing. He got lucky with one investment." Some people, it seemed, would never change. After helping my father to his bedroom, I returned to find the dinner party had splintered. Abigail and Thomas were speaking quietly by the fireplace. Jackson was on his phone, likely damage control with his business contacts. Emily was calmly fending off Ashley's sudden interest in technology investment opportunities. I walked over to Emily and squeezed her hand. "Ready to leave?" "Soon," she replied with a meaningful look. "There are still some things that need to be said." She was right. We couldn't leave things as they were. With temporary truces and unresolved tensions, the patterns would simply repeat unless addressed directly. Jackson ended his call and approached us. "Channing, we need to clear the air. Business is business. What you call betrayal, I call being proactive about opportunities. Stealing intellectual property from your brother is not being proactive," I replied evenly. "It's criminal." "That recording is being taken out of context," he insisted. "I was gathering intelligence that could have benefited us both." Emily stepped forward. "The recording has been submitted to our legal team. They'll determine the appropriate course of action." Jackson's confident facade cracked slightly. "You wouldn't pursue legal action against your own brother." "I hope it doesn't come to that," I said honestly. "But that depends on your next moves." Abigail joined us, her expression troubled. "This family is falling apart. Can't we find a way forward together?" "I've been trying for years," I told her. "But forward together doesn't mean subjugating my life and choices to Dad's vision or Jackson's ambitions." "No one is asking you to subjugate anything," Jackson argued. "We're talking about family synergy." "Synergy?" I repeated incredulously. "You tried to steal my work and sell it to competitors. Dad actively sabotaged my business relationships. Those aren't actions of people interested in synergy." "Everyone makes mistakes," Jackson said dismissively. "These weren't mistakes," I countered. "They were deliberate choices, reflecting values I don't share." My father reappeared at the doorway, looking somewhat recovered though still pale. "I couldn't rest," he explained. "Too much unfinished business." He walked slowly back to his chair. Channing is right, he said, surprising everyone. What Jackson did, what I did, these weren't mistakes. They were choices based on a worldview I've cultivated in this family. Jackson looked betrayed. Dad, you can't be serious. I am, my father insisted. For years I've measured success in dollars and status. I raised you children to compete rather than support each other. I withheld approval unless you followed my exact path. And it worked, Jackson argued. Look at what we've built. At what cost? My father asked quietly. A family that can't celebrate Christmas without manipulation and betrayal. The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. It was perhaps the most honest thing my father had ever said. I never wanted any of you to struggle the way I did, he continued after a moment. I grew up with nothing. My father worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on some months. This was a side of family history we rarely discussed. My father had reinvented himself so thoroughly that his humble beginnings were almost erased from our narrative. When I started making real money, he continued, I promised myself my children would never know that kind of insecurity. But somehow, I created a different kind of insecurity. Emotional insecurity. Dad, Jackson protested, don't let one evening of drama erase everything you've built, everything you stand for. I'm not erasing anything, my father replied. I'm acknowledging reality. My approach created success but damaged relationships. Both can be true. He turned to me. Channing, I owe you an apology. Not just for tonight, but for years of dismissing your choices because they didn't match mine. I nodded, too surprised to speak immediately. Your success, he continued, isn't just about the money. It's about creating something meaningful on your own terms. Something I never fully accomplished, having inherited my starting capital from your grandfather's insurance policy. This was another piece of family history that was rarely mentioned. The Empire from Nothing narrative omitted the $20,000 life insurance payout that funded my father's first real estate purchase. You've actually done what I always claimed to do, he admitted. Built something valuable from the ground up. Jackson looked like he'd been slapped. Dad, what are you saying? What about everything we built together? We've built something substantial, my father acknowledged. But not with the independence Channing has shown. Not with the courage to walk away from certainty toward a vision only he could see. He turned to Emily. And you, young lady, I misjudged entirely. Your brilliance and determination are extraordinary. Emily accepted his words with a gracious nod. So what now? Abigail asked the question on everyone's mind. I took a deep breath. Now we decide what kind of family we want to be moving forward. The success Emily and I have found doesn't have to change who we are or how we relate to each other. But the manipulations and betrayals do need to stop. I agree, my father said firmly. No more undermining each other. No more measuring worth solely by financial metrics. Jackson looked unconvinced. So we're supposed to just forget everything that happened tonight? Not forget. I corrected him. Learn from it. Grow from it. Choose to be different moving forward. And the recording? He asked warily. Stays with our legal team, Emily stated. What happens with it depends on your choices moving forward. Jackson didn't look happy with this arrangement, but he nodded reluctantly. I've spent my life chasing what I thought was success, my father reflected, only to realize I was measuring the wrong things. True success includes integrity, relationships, purpose beyond accumulation. It's never too late to change course, I offered. Even for a stubborn old man like me? My father asked with a hint of his former humor. Especially for stubborn old men, I replied with a small smile. They have the most to gain. As the evening drew to a close, no magical transformation had occurred. My father was still my father, with all his flaws and strengths. Jackson remained Jackson, though perhaps with a new wariness about the consequences of his actions. But something fundamental had shifted in how we saw each other and ourselves. Emily and I said our goodbyes, promising to return for a proper family discussion after the holidays. As we walked to my Toyota, leaving behind the mansion with its perfect decorations and imperfect inhabitants. I felt lighter than I had in years. That went differently than expected, Emily observed as we drove away. Everything about tonight was unexpected, I agreed. 20 years of family dynamics confronted in one evening. Do you think anything will really change? She asked. I considered the question carefully. I think the possibility for change exists now. Whether anyone chooses it remains to be seen. Emily squeezed my hand. Well, at least we won't have to hide our success anymore. Or our relationship, I added. Though I suspect you made quite an impression tonight. The look on your brother's face when he heard $26 billion was priceless, she laughed. Almost as priceless as when Ashley tried to convince us she always believed in me, I added. As we drove through the quiet streets, Christmas lights twinkling in the darkness, I felt profoundly grateful. Not just for the success we'd achieved, but for the authentic partnership Emily and I had built. Unlike the conditional acceptance I'd grown up with, our relationship was based on mutual respect and genuine support. Whatever happens with my family, I told Emily, I'm thankful for what we've created together. The technology? She asked. That too, I said. But I meant us. What we have is worth more than any acquisition. She smiled in the darkness. Now that's a valuation I can agree with. 1 year later, Emily and I hosted our own Christmas gathering in our new home. We'd purchased a spacious but comfortable house outside Boston, elegant without being ostentatious. Unlike my father's cold mansion with its museum-like perfection, our home was designed for living, for conversation, for genuine connection. The past year had brought profound changes, both professionally and personally. Our technology had been integrated into TechCore's product line with remarkable success. Market analysts were calling it revolutionary, particularly in healthcare applications where it was helping identify disease patterns and potential treatments with unprecedented accuracy. We'd established the Carter Morgan Foundation, focusing on educational initiatives for underprivileged students interested in technology. The foundation had already provided scholarships to 20 promising young people who otherwise might never have had the opportunity to pursue their dreams. As I put the finishing touches on our dinner table, I heard the doorbell ring. My father was the first to arrive, alone and carrying a small gift bag. He looked healthier than he had in years, having finally addressed the stress and anxiety issues that had contributed to his episode the previous Christmas. The house looks wonderful, he said as I took his coat. Tasteful, warm. Thank you, I replied. Emily's influence more than mine. He handed me the gift bag. Something small for you both. Though what do you get for the couple who can buy anything? Dad, I chided gently. We've talked about this. Old habits, he admitted with a rueful smile. I'm working on it. And he was. Over the past year, my father had been seeing a therapist to address his controlling tendencies and materialistic values. Our relationship was slowly healing, though with clear boundaries that I maintained firmly. How's the therapy going? I asked, as I led him to the living room. Challenging, he admitted. Turns out 60 years of defining myself through acquisition and control doesn't change overnight. But it's helping. I'm learning to listen more than I speak. I've noticed. I acknowledged. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Abigail and Thomas with their new baby, Sophia. She's gotten so big, I marveled, taking my 3-month-old niece into my arms. And loud, Abigail laughed. Sleep is a distant memory. Abigail had undergone her own transformation over the past year. After watching the family drama unfold last Christmas, she had begun questioning her own choices and priorities. She'd started a small interior design business, something she'd always been passionate about, but had set aside to fulfill the proper role expected in our family. How's the business going? I asked as we settled in the living room. Surprisingly well, she beamed. I just finished a project for the Hendersons. You remember them, Dad's golf friends? They loved what I did with their lake house. My father nodded approvingly. She has a genuine talent. Should have pursued it years ago. Better late than never, Abigail replied with a pointed look at our father, who had the grace to look slightly abashed. Jackson arrived last, without a date. The past year had been challenging for him. After his attempt to steal our technology came to light, several of his business partners had distanced themselves from him. His reputation had suffered, and for the first time in his life, success hadn't come easily. "Merry Christmas," he offered stiffly, handing Emily a bottle of wine. "Thank you for coming," she replied graciously. "Please, make yourself comfortable." The tension between Jackson and me remained, though it had evolved from active hostility to cautious distance. He had eventually offered a grudging apology for his actions, motivated more by self-preservation than genuine remorse. Still, it was a start. "The development in Westbrook is finally moving forward," he announced, as we sat down for dinner. "Breaking ground in February." "That's great news," I said sincerely. "I know how hard you've worked on that project." He nodded, seemingly surprised by my genuine interest. "How's the new algorithm coming along?" my father asked, as Emily served the main course. "Remarkably well," she replied. "The healthcare applications are showing particular promise. We're seeing pattern recognition capabilities that could revolutionize early disease detection. More important than making money," my father observed, surprising everyone. "Exactly," Emily agreed. "Though the financial applications continue to exceed expectations as well." As dinner progressed, the conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years. There were still awkward moments, old patterns threatening to re-emerge. But there was also laughter, genuine curiosity, even moments of vulnerability. After dessert, Emily and I shared our news. "We're engaged," I announced, as Emily showed off the simple but elegant ring on her finger. "The wedding will be next spring." Abigail squealed with delight. My father raised his glass in a toast. Even Jackson offered congratulations that seemed mostly sincere. "We have one more announcement," Emily added, her eyes meeting mine. "We're establishing a new division within TechCore, focused entirely on developing our technology for educational applications. The profit margins in education are minimal," Jackson pointed out, "old habits showing through." "Which is precisely why it needs innovation," I replied. "Success isn't just measured in quarterly returns." My father raised his eyebrows at this direct challenge to his long-held philosophy, but then nodded slowly. "You know, I'm beginning to understand that perspective." Later, as the evening wound down, I found myself alone with my father on the back deck. The December air was crisp, our breath visible in small clouds. "You've built something remarkable here, Channing," he said after a comfortable silence. "Not just the business, but this life, this family you're creating." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched. "That means a lot. I was wrong about so many things," he admitted. "Success, worth, what it means to leave a legacy. We all make mistakes, Dad. Mine were systematic," he countered. "A lifetime of measuring the wrong things, teaching my children to do the same. Yet here we are," I observed. "Learning, growing, changing." He nodded thoughtfully. "Your mother would have been proud of you. She always saw something in you that I missed. A depth, an integrity that couldn't be measured in traditional terms." The mention of my mother, who had passed away when I was 15, caught me by surprise. My father rarely spoke of her. "She valued different things than I did," he continued. "Connection, purpose, joy in the everyday. I dismissed those as soft, impractical. Now I wonder if she understood something fundamental that I'm only beginning to grasp." "It's never too late to learn," I offered. "No," he agreed, "though I regret the years wasted on false priorities." Inside, I could see Emily laughing with Abigail, the baby sleeping peacefully in her carrier nearby. Jackson was engaged in what appeared to be a civil conversation with Thomas. Not perfect, not completely healed, but progress. "What I've learned this past year," I told my father, "is that true wealth has nothing to do with bank accounts or property portfolios. It's about authenticity, integrity, meaningful work, and genuine connection. Lessons your old man is still struggling to internalize," he admitted. "But I'm trying." "That's all any of us can do," I replied. "Try, learn, grow, try again. As we rejoined the others inside, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. The path hadn't been easy or straight. There had been pain, betrayal, conflict. But through it all, Emily and I had remained true to our values, our vision, our belief in what was possible. The money, the acquisition, the professional success were wonderful, of course. But the true richness lay in the journey we'd undertaken together, the person I'd become along the way, and the authentic relationships we were building. As our guests prepared to leave, I looked around at this imperfect, evolving family of ours. There was still work to be done, old wounds still healing, new patterns being established. But for perhaps the first time, I felt hopeful about our collective future. Next year at our place, my father suggested tentatively. If you're willing. We'd like that, Emily answered for us both. In that moment, I realized that the greatest wealth I possessed wasn't measured in billions, but in the freedom to live authentically, to love wholeheartedly, and to define success on my own terms. No family fortune or corporate acquisition could ever match the value of that revelation. Have you ever had to stand up for your own path when others doubted you? Or found unexpected success that changed how people treated you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of fighting for your dreams against family pressure resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to see more authentic stories of triumph, and share with someone who might need encouragement to stay true to their own vision. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And remember that true success is measured by more than just money. It's about living with purpose and integrity.